Good afternoon. I'm Chris Fleming. I am the 5th and 6th grade teacher at Roy N. Schelling Elementary. Today I'm talking to 5th graders who are about to go into 6th grade next fall. You're going to be familiar with most of the things that I'm talking about, so this for you is going to be somewhat of a review. However, 4th graders who are now going to be entering into 5th grade in the upcoming school year, pay attention. These are going to be some of the things that you're going to be dealing with your entire year next year. In 5th grade, we study several different types of civilizations. We go all the way back and we take a look at civilizations that developed mostly in North America, Middle or Mesoamerica, and South America. From there, we watch as North America has developed, colonized, and then we see how that civilization begins. Every single group of people that we're going to be talking about in 5th grade, they share certain things, certain characteristics. And you're going to have to be able to recognize those characteristics when you see them with each different group of people. And you're going to have to apply these concepts to everyone that we're going to be studying next year. Let's go ahead and begin. This is an introduction to early civilizations, the rights and responsibilities of citizenship for those civilizations. First, let's define what a civilization really is. I have 4 definitions here, but instead of spending a lot of time on all 4 of them, I'm going to zoom in on the 3rd one. C says civilization is the society, culture, and way of life of a particular area. The people who are living there, how do they use the resources? Do they trade amongst themselves? Do they trade with others? What's the geography like, the landscape? How do they use that to their advantage? How can they use it as a form of defense? Does this provide them with enough food, with fresh water? All of these things have to do with that particular area. That's the definition of civilization that we're basically going to be focusing on for this lesson today. There are a few different characteristics that I've isolated for this lesson. Let's go ahead and start talking about them in particular. First of all, every civilization that we're going to be talking about in 5th grade has to have some form of centralized government. A centralized government is the folks who are in charge. They're the ones who make the rules, the laws, that if you're going to be a part of this society, you're going to have to follow those rules. You're going to have to follow those laws. But there are certain things you get back in return. Check this out. The central authority or power has control over the people in the area. The people who are under control of that government, they're going to follow those laws, those rules, like we said. And here's the thing, they're going to be protected against enemies who may come from outside their civilization. The government's going to make sure that they're protected, they're taken care of. There may be different classes of people in the government, in the civilization, and this can be based on a number of different things. Wealth, it can be religion, it can be who's most influential. A centralized government, we also call it a state system. This is essential for a successful civilization. We're going to study some groups of people in 5th grade who never really got this part. They never got it together. Well, their civilization didn't last very long at all. Let's go to our next one. Here's our modern day examples for centralized government. Let's talk about it. The U.S. government is going to be our central authority. Our government sets the laws and provides for the defense of our country. Now, let me ask you this. In the United States of America, we have different levels of government. Can you think of, I don't know, more than one? Well, I know that we have the President of the United States in Washington, D.C., so that's called the national or the federal government. That's the big government. But hey, I also know that we have a governor in the state of Louisiana. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, every state has their own governor. They have their own government. Every state has its own capital city where the governor is and where all the people who make the laws for that state are. So there it is. There's 2 different types of government right there that we have in our country. The national government that gives us the Army, the Air Force, the Navy, all that stuff. And then we have our state government, which provides us with all the services we have, things like roads and stoplights. And then you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, there's a 3rd one. Every city is led by a mayor, and that mayor helps to determine what that city expects from the people living there. Oh, so there we go. We just named 3 different types of government. And they're all modern day examples of that definition we just saw of centralized government, state system. Cool. All right, let's go on to the next. Organized religion. Every civilization that we are going to study, every successful civilization that we know of has had some form of organized religion. And by organized religion, the definition here says the belief system of a civilization. I'm not just talking about, oh, we kind of believe in something. It has to be organized. It has to be developed enough that in this religion, these people have decided, okay, we're going to pray this way, we're going to worship this way, the name of our person that we're praying to, or if it's a person, the name of that God that we're praying to is whatever. They all agree on all of the different aspects of their religion. That's an organized religion. It's not just some people who kind of, one day they believe one thing, the next day they believe the next. No, that's not what we're talking about at all. We're talking about organized religion. Okay, let's go to our third characteristic. This is important for those of you who are in fourth coming to fifth. When you see the word economy, think money. Think how people trade stuff. Is somebody making money from doing business? Is somebody getting a bargain because they're buying something for less than it's really worth? All of these things have to do with the economy. How a civilization generates money, how they use their money, how they use it to trade, to get other resources, to make their civilization even better. When I say resources, I'm talking about things that you need to build your buildings, to make your roads. I'm talking about food to keep your civilization healthy and strong. Job specialization is very important to a successful civilization. Let's take a look. Economies, the resources of civilization, how they produce and use them to develop wealth, getting rich. Currency that sustains and advances a civilization, makes the civilization better. Job specialization is when individuals in that civilization, they concentrate on one particular area, which can lead to better productivity. That means the civilization is going to get things done, more things done better, allowing for all the good stuff in life. If you have people who are focused on doing just one job and doing it well, you have someone over here who's good with medicine, well, that's the doctor, let him do that. You have someone over here who's good with agriculture, planting food, okay, great, let them do that. You have somebody over here who's into clothing, okay, great, let them be the one who focuses on making better clothes. Everybody focuses on one thing and you get more done and you have more time to enjoy all the things that you made. That's what we mean by allowing for leisure time activities. Social classes here, just like when we talked about the government, social classes are going to develop from job specialization because some people are just going to be naturally good at it. Some will become wealthier than others doing their thing. Okay, so economy, job specialization. Let's take a look. If you have an economy that's going, chances are in your civilization, your government, your centralized government is also going to develop some system of tribute. Y'all, that's just a fancy way of saying taxes. Every civilization that you're going to study in 5th grade and in 6th grade is going to have some form of taxes to pay to keep the civilization going. That's a part of what the centralized government does. The collection of taxes or some kind of payment to the government to provide services. If we're not talking about a civilization that deals with money, like dollars and coins, what do they have? What do they use? Well, they're going to find something. Here it says a food surplus supports a system of tribute. If food is used as the tribute, as the form of tax. Example, there's a civilization called the ancient Egyptians that you're going to be learning a lot about. For hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, they didn't use money as for their taxes. They used wheat. Wheat, you can make flour. From flour, you make bread. Bread, water keeps you alive. Wheat was more important than anything else for hundreds of years for the Egyptians. All right, what about us? Let's think about some modern day examples. What type of taxes do we actually use in our country, in our community, in our town, however you wanted to think about it? What are some modern day examples? Where do you pay taxes? Let's take a look. Here we go. Federal. When you see the word federal, that's national government. Federal government, national government. Federal income taxes. Anybody in America who has a job has to pay federal income taxes. A little bit of money comes out of every single paycheck you have, and it goes to Washington, D.C. to pay for the things like the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, the Marines, to protect us, to make sure no enemies do harm to us. Okay, what's the next one? State income taxes. Sure, Louisiana, every year when you have a job, you pay taxes. You're not just going to pay taxes to the national government, you're also going to be paying some to the state that you live in our case, Louisiana. And then finally, this is the one that y'all are familiar with. Anytime you go into a store, you buy something, there's going to be a tax put on top of that. If you're going to buy something for $1, well, you better have $1 and about a dime in your pocket, because you're going to have to pay a little bit more. That's the tax. If you go into any store in Louisiana, you are going to pay a tax for whatever you buy. That's used for all the things in your particular area, your particular city. It can go to your public schools, your fire department, your police department. The list goes on and on. All right, those are modern day examples of a system of tribute, which is a fancy way of saying taxes, which every civilization has to have. All right, here we go, surplus food. If you are a civilization and you have more food than you actually need, we say you have a surplus. Surplus, it's more than is required to keep the people who are in that civilization alive. And that's a huge luxury. Having access to more food than a civilization needs through farming, hunting, etc., which allows a civilization to sustain, but even more important, to advance itself, to become better, to become stronger, to become wiser. The geography of a place often dictates how food is produced. It's easier to grow food in fields with good soil than it is up on rocky mountains. Settling around waterways is incredibly important. Fresh water is so essential to a civilization being successful. There are so many examples of people who decided, well, we really like living out here on the edge of the desert, but all of a sudden, in a couple of years, what little stream or what little river they were living by on the edge of the desert dried up. All of a sudden, those people were in a drought. They had to move or die. You've got to be around fresh water, not just for drinking, but also for growing your food. Drinking water, water for animals, crops. Crops are any plant that you grow that you're going to eat or sell. All right, surplus food. And let's talk about this for us. We're in Louisiana. Do we have a surplus of food? I would say sure, but not everybody does. However, the folks who grow food in Louisiana, yeah, check this out. Modern day example. I'm going to use rice as the big one. Our agricultural specialization in Louisiana. Louisiana grows sugarcane, especially down south, and they grow rice that can't be grown in most of the other parts of the United States of America. So for years and years and years, the rice farmers in Louisiana, they did really well. They grew tons of rice in southern Louisiana, and then they shipped it all around the country. And then something really surprising happened. China ran out of enough area to grow enough rice for all their people. Pretty soon, the Chinese were contacting Louisiana farmers and saying, hey, do you have a surplus of rice? Louisiana farmers said, you bet we do, how much you need? Now, a lot of the rice that the Louisiana farmers grow actually goes to China because we have more than we need to feed our people. That's a surplus of food. Next, planned infrastructure. Planned infrastructure, this is a fancy way of saying everything you build. As a civilization, you're going to need certain things, roads, buildings, whatever. All of this better be planned out first. If you do not plan how you want your community to work and how to function, how to get things done, if you don't put your buildings in the right order, if you don't put your roads going to the right places, it's hard to make that civilization successful. In fact, most times it isn't. Planned infrastructure, physical and organizational structures, such as buildings, roads, tombs, which is a fancy word for graves, very important, needed for a civilization to function. Planned roads or transportation through waterways. This supports trade. It also supports expansion. If you have roads, if you have waterways that you can use to move whatever it is that you're going to be trading with people all around your civilization, if you have your roads built right, if you have waterways that you put boats on and you can ship things quickly, you're going to become successful. You're going to become wealthier faster. This is what we mean by expansion. Both of these things help sustain and advance the civilization, once again. All right, here we go. I've got some modern day examples. This is important. As a population of a civilization grows, of course, there are additions to the existing infrastructure. Remember, the planned infrastructure. The more people you have in your civilization, then all of a sudden, you're going to need more stuff. You're going to need more buildings. Your roads are going to have to be wider. They're going to have to be bigger because you have more people that are using your roads every single day. Same with bridges. Anything that you can look around and see in your town, your city, it was planned. Before somebody nailed that first nail into a piece of wood, they said, okay, what's this building going to look like? Are we building it in the right place? Is this the best we can do? You see it all around you every day, including the school that you're in. So modern day examples, it's all around us. Planned infrastructure, incredibly important. Trade, going back to the economy, trade is an exchange of a good or a service of some kind for something else. Usually a monetary exchange. That's a fancy way of saying usually money's involved. If I'm going to sell you something, that's a good. Or if I'm offering some kind of service, like I'm fixing your car, or then chances are I'm doing it because I'm going to get some kind of money. Goods must be moved easily. Whatever jobs we're doing, whatever trade is going on in our civilization, it has to be efficient, it has to be effective, it's got to be, nothing needs to slow it down because we're in this to become successful, to become wealthier, our civilization becomes better. So a food surplus, once again, going back to that characteristic, a food surplus results in huge trade opportunities. If you have a surplus of food, somebody is going to be coming, knocking on your door and saying, hey, can we have some of that food? That's just always the way it's been for civilizations since the very beginning. A surplus of food means you can get into the trade business, trading food for money, for other stuff. That's why I put in food surplus for the great example of trade. Okay, just a few more for this lesson. Let's take a look. Here are modern day examples of trade. Louisiana exports petroleum. If you don't know, petroleum is a fancy way of saying oil and gas. Also, we mentioned sugarcane and rice earlier. We export, that means we send off tons of petroleum, tons of sugarcane. We send off tons of rice to China. We just mentioned that. We import, that means we bring in other goods that are hard to grow here in the United States of America, or maybe they just aren't as available as the other things. Sure, we have tons of rice in Louisiana, but guess what? We don't have the right soil, we don't have what it takes to grow potatoes. We can grow some, but we can't really make a big business of it because we're just not in the right geography. We don't have the right amount of water. It's too humid in the air. The soil isn't correct. Something keeps us from successfully becoming big potato farmers. Rice, we got that. Louisiana's growing rice like crazy. Potatoes, we have to bring those in from someplace else. If you bring something in, of course, you're importing it. If you're sending something out or away from you, you're exporting it. So, all right, let's go to our next characteristics. Accumulated learning. Gathering of knowledge that results in achievement in communication. Language, writing, math, science. Y'all, it can be as simple as stories or of wisdom that some parent tells their child. And then when the child grows up, they tell their children. And they just pass this knowledge down. What happens is eventually the people in your civilization end up becoming smarter and smarter and smarter as the generations go, from grandparent to parent to children. Every next generation is going to hopefully become a little bit smarter, a little bit wiser because of this accumulated learning. The knowledge that one generation has, they're giving it to the next generation. The next generation's already ahead. They grow up, they learn things, they add to that knowledge, they pass that to the next generation. This is what's meant by accumulated learning. And every successful civilization that we know of in the world has relied on this incredibly so. Accumulated learning. Modern day examples. Again, parents teaching children. It can be that simple. Things like speaking, manners, how to behave, how to think about certain things. this is really where public education is so awesome. Nobody just naturally, well, some people, but most people don't naturally just sit around and try to figure out brand new, really complicated math problems. But if you go to a public classroom, well, all of a sudden they're going to go ahead and start teaching you, not just about multiplication and division, but producing fractions, and then it just keeps going. Most people wouldn't really come up with that on their own. But this is important knowledge. This is knowledge that applies to so many aspects of your life that it's essential. It's necessary that somebody gives this knowledge to you. Well, that's accumulated learning. All right, very good. Let's go to our next one. The arts. Every civilization has their own form of arts. And by arts, I just put a few examples here. I put music, sure, dance, sculpture, how you carve statues, architecture, but there's painting, there's poetry, the list is endless. Every civilization stands out through their own unique way of expressing themselves, through any of these ways. Music, you can go around the world and just be astounded by the different ways that people play very similar musical instruments, but in completely different ways, because their form of art it developed differently. Again, accumulated learning comes into that a lot, especially with writing, forms of dance. Architecture, by the way, is how we build our buildings, and it's one of the most beautiful art forms. A lot of people just think buildings are all square, they have windows, they have doors. And that's not the way architects think. Architects are making an artistic statement, how they design buildings, what it looks like, what you feel like when you're in the building. It says a lot about a civilization, how their buildings are done. So, arts. Modern day examples, of course, many different genres of music. That means different types of music and dance. Art, architecture, we just talked about. There are museums that have paintings hanging in them, but guess what? The museums themselves are works of art in many cases. It's wonderful. And they're all different in each different country you go to, each different civilization. Very good, here we go. Next, I believe we're going to stop it at that one. These are approximately 9 characteristics of civilization. And once again, if you are in 4th grade and you're coming up to 5th grade at the beginning of the fall next year, these are things that you're going to have to understand. You're going to apply to each of the civilizations that we study. If you were in 5th grade, you were introduced to this. This was familiar to you, I hope. So it was a quick review for you just to keep your head in the game. But when you get to 6th grade, you're going to take this up to the next level. In 6th grade, you're going to be talking about world history, world civilizations. And you're going to meet some groups of people. You're going to be amazed at how these 9 characteristics are represented by each of the different groups. And I think you'll enjoy it very much. Very good, that is today's lesson. Again, I'm Mr. Fleming, and we'll be taking a look at 5th grade content, kind of as a review, but also I'm hoping that there are students who are at the end of their 4th grade year who are going to be coming up to 5th grade. And right now, I'm just kind of introducing you to some of these things to kind of give you a step up so you'll be sort of ahead of the curve. All right, thanks very much. Come back, join us again, and everyone have a great day. Thank you.